Okay, I'm sorry. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our additional training session on advocacy, lobby skills, and how we're going to be powerful tomorrow at the intergovernmental session where our chair, Niranzai, will present the first outcome and the recommendations to the ECE. So today is an opportunity for you to learn a little, to learn or to know or to improve our advocacy and lobby skills. Because what we are realizing is that the world is changing so rapidly, and most of NGOs need training, ongoing training, to be really the powerful lobbyists that we have to become, because everything is becoming more political. And we need to now step into an increased pace to tell the governments what we need and what we want. So I welcome all of you. I apologize, the name tags are not ready yet, or they will come from the Bureau. My name is Eli Pradavant. I'm the chair of the CSW, but also of the substantive issues, and I'm responsible for this program because I recommended it. Next to me is Sonia Heptonstall. She is the main representative of another NGO called the Solar Cookers International, and she will bring you the historical origin and legitimacy of consultative status, presenting the UN resolution 1996 and the ECOSOC guide. We have documents for you that will be made available after our presentation, so to ensure that we have enough copies. Then comes Mr. Hamish Jenkins. Hello, from UNGLS. This is the United Nations Non-Governmental Liaison Service in Geneva. I think you have something similar in New York. I don't know what it is called, maybe DPI, yeah, I don't know, same thing. And he will give us examples of good lobby skills. What makes up a good, powerful lobby process? After Mr. Jenkins, we have Pierrette Pape from the European Women's Lobby. She is the policy officer and project coordinator. And why did we invite the European lobby? Because they are so effective in lobbying the 28 EU countries. But because ECE is 56 countries, the other 28 countries do not yet have your expertise to really engage with the governments to bring about the change, but also to present the women's position and what we need. So thank you for being with us. And then at the end, I have the great pleasure of introducing to you Carolina Rodriguez, who is the head of International Geneva Perception Change Project in the office of the United Nations Director General. And we have asked her to speak how, in the rebranding of the UN, how will the women's NGO and the NGOs in general will be included? Because as you know, Geneva is rebranding, the UN is rebranding itself, because the world needs to appreciate what the UN is bringing to humanity with all its agencies, institutions, clusters of excellencies that are in Geneva, because from here comes, in fact, how are we going to learn about global governance. So we will really look forward to hearing from you, and thank you for being with us. I have also with me, and this was the last minute decision, that's why you're not on the program, our chair of the Forum Report Editing Committee. She has extensively presented this afternoon or this morning the draft outcome of the forum and the clusters of recommendations that will be presented tomorrow at the intergovernmental session. So when I finish with my introduction, I will give the floor to Manjit Donsaj, who is the chair of that report, and she will show you very briefly the list of recommendations that we should bring tomorrow for those of you who will be present to the governments directly, and to have lobby points that come directly out of our NGO forum. So I'll stop it here. Every speaker will have 10 minutes, except for Sonia. She will have a little bit more time because she's really the expert on Article 71 in the Charter, which guarantees to civil society the right to intervene and work with governments. And we want to bring this up and reinforce this power that is given to the NGOs that have ECOSOC status. So I close here and I give the floor to Manjit to guide us through a brief introduction of the recommendations of the roundtables and the forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. Thank you all. I'm not going to need 10 minutes. 2 or 3 minutes are enough. The only thing I wanted to say is, if we are talking about lobbying and making your case, the strongest one is that photograph here with all of you there. If there's that many voices behind a common cause, then that's one of your biggest tools. And then I think that this might be an interesting thing, because when I was trying to put the document together, we came up with this idea that, every woman, every right, every minute. It's not day, it's not night, it's not Europe, it's not Albania, it's all the time, everywhere, and everyone. And everyone is responsible, and the time to act is now. We have a great opportunity, many things are happening, including what's happened now and the ECE process in the next 2 days. We have CSW coming up, we have the SD 2015, so there's a lot of opportunities, so we need to be on board now. I'm not going to discuss this, but the only thing about the document, by the way, this morning for the declaration, if I may, it was to get comments. It's not the final declaration, but after this meeting, I'm going to sit with Nirazai, and we are going to finalize it with the comments we are receiving. It's your document, so if you need some clarification, you have comments, please send us an email. But we have to finalize it this afternoon, because then has to be translated and submitted to the UNECE today, and then tomorrow Nirazai will present it. Okay? Now, just another comment. I know we're not talking about the clusters yet, but this is the 4 pages, which is what the limit is by the UNECE. However, there will be a longer, much more complete document where you will see all the things you've been sending me on your documentation, your abstracts, and so on. So the 4 pages is just a page limit of what we have, so we have to be succinct and try to really get our key issues, okay? So now, another thing we have done is, rather than just stay with the 12 areas of Beijing 20 years ago, is that we know that there are new emerging issues, and Ellie has been instrumental in organizing the roundtables yesterday, and you saw that there are new emerging issues, such as aging, boys and men, migrants, and also the science, technology, innovation, the one I organize as well. So there are new issues. But of course, we know that the 12 points are the 12 points. So the way we've tried to do this is we've clustered into topics, into 10 topics. So they are cross-cutting, they are cross-seeding, and so on. So the 10 clusters, we've got our women's rights are human rights, accountability and resourcing, violence against women and conflict, building a culture of peace, poverty, economics and social development, money matters. And by the way, in brackets are what the original 12 points were in the Beijing Action Plan. Participation and decision making, and we really need, the power has to shift. It hasn't shifted in 20 years, or at least minimally in some areas, and some are more effective, and in some areas we're going backwards, okay? Environment and climate justice, and these are now really also, environment was there, but climate is now a big thing, and it's people and planet is our planet. Okay, so the other 5 are migrant and displaced women, together in solidarity, women and health, girls, aging, intergenerational justice. Is really building a common future. So I know that somebody has given me some suggestions how they want to see the fact that the aging, they mean the continuous process, but we will negotiate the language. Education, science, technology, innovation, transformation for all, and media and communications, breaking stereotypes. And I just finish with our basically act, advance, achieve women's rights. That's all.
Thank you very much, Manjit, and especially for all the work and the sleepless nights to get it all together. Now, in your handbook, you have the bios of the speakers, so I won't go through them to save time and to also get your comments and questions at the end. So Sonia Heptonstall is, Sonia, you're getting your PowerPoint ready?
Yeah, well,
Yes, okay. So I don't have to introduce you because everything is in the bio. You can say a few words about yourself because she has a huge history, and she will start the process of sharing with us the historical origin and the legitimacy of consultative status. You have the floor. You, yes.
I thank you, Ellie, for what you're saying, and I thank you very much, and I say it's a very great pleasure to be here this afternoon, because one of the major issues is that we all care enormously. We are all very committed as individuals, but the question is how have we, and how do we bring about change? You can only recall that in 1797, in my own country, the United Kingdom, slavery was abolished. Well, what about trafficking today? So consequently, any idea that by waving a magic wand, we can in fact bring about the change we also vitally require is not to be thought about. But there are methodologies, there is a way, and we all of us need to understand and appreciate and work with the skills that we've been given. Now, what Manjit has just pointed out very clearly is that the work that has been undertaken over the past days has two themes attached to it. On the one hand, they relate to the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. Now, I've found many people that did not ever look at the structure of the United Nations and who did not know that, in fact, there were 5 commissions with considerable activity. We now joyfully have UNECE, who is our goodwill ambassador on issues such as child marriage, appointed by the Organization of African Unity. This is a magnificent thing which is happening nowadays, but you have to also think, how did that come about? It didn't come about suddenly. So on the one hand, these meetings are at the government level, and Nyanza is going to present the recommendations that Manjit has just produced for you to the government delegates. So that is one element. But on the other side, you also have to think about the other element, that these discussions have resonance not only for participants as they were in room 17, but for the entire membership of our associations on their own ground and how they handle what is their job, which is to reflect the will and the opinions and the thoughts of their members. It is not the officials, it's the membership, it's the individual person that signs up for an association. For all of those of us who have an abiding interest in advancing the status of women, and I promise you I do, as a result of that, we have the UN Commission on the Status of Women, with a secretariat which is now in UN Women. But you have to remember that's a functional commission of the UN structure. It's a functional commission. It's not a regional commission, it's a functional commission addressed as all the other functional commissions to one particular factor. It could be climate, it could be narcotic drugs, it could be statistics. So the point is there are two themes going, and we need to keep them out separate in our minds. So why are we here? Well, I have just started to refer to it. As individuals, all of us are compelled by our values and principles to make the world a better place, to make good our belief in the dignity and worth of the human person, to develop better standards of life for society, and to live in peace with one another, and to be good neighbors wherever may happen to be found. This is a call for all humanity, and Manjit has just referred to it. We exercise our call for all humanity. We exercise it through interacting with our families, with our friends, our communities, our personal interests, and through membership of non-governmental organizations. We work on international goodwill and understanding. But why then should we be involved in consultative status and so government business? I think it important to share with you a little background. Without the existence of universal world government, the resolution of disputes has inevitably been carried out in a situation of anarchy rather than the rule of law. Most frequently, action has been characterized by violence and settlement achieved through military might. In practical terms, it has generally fallen to the skill of the individual nation state and their foreign offices, working with diplomats out of the foreign service to fight the corner, to mobilize the people, and as we know, in 1914-18, to be mown down by the examples of modern weaponry. This is in contrast to what we here do, which is civil society. It is the role of civil society influence. It's not shouting at somebody and saying, do this, do that, and do the other. It is a question of patience, waiting, finding the right exact moment in which one can provide the advocacy and bring about the outcome of the public meetings which we've had in order to encapsulate the changes that we all want. This is a system that has always been in place to provide the collective voice, not one particular clique, but the collective voice of civil society and bring about action. But how come the United Nations is so central to our lives today? Ellie has just pointed out about the rebranding of the United Nations. But first of all, what is it? What is it? This is surely the point we should look at. It's central to our lives, for sure, and it is the parallel, a parallel to the militarism to which I have just mentioned. Now, of course, you have to remember that this balance between militarism and civil society did change in 1918. And it was Woodrow Wilson. I don't know how many of you are visitors in Geneva, but I do hope you go past the Palais Wilson, now the home of the United Nations Human Rights Center. But Woodrow Wilson was here, and Woodrow Wilson was the man who, in fact, put forward the fact that there had to be a civil society-oriented form of world discussion in the League of Nations. Well, we all know that it didn't work. And so we were all engulfed in 1939 in the most horrendous and horrible happenings. Now, yet again, at the end of that, despite the failure of the League of Nations, Winston Churchill and FDR, again, FDR, President of the United States, came together and said, okay, it failed. Maybe we have to do exactly the same thing again. But how did they do it? They called a conference. They called a meeting. They pulled in the number of governments that they had at the time to San Francisco, and they sat them around the table, as we are here now, and they said, come on, what is it that we want? What is it that should happen? And as a result of that, we had this. As a result of that, it's a charter, it's a piece of paper with a list of what, in fact, should take place. And it's the system that civil society has done, whether any of us have been involved in a swimming pool for the local school or anything like that. You had to sit down the table, you had to bring consensus, you had to develop cooperation. You then had to express, encapsulate, to say what, in fact, it is that you want to happen. You need a charter. So, consequently, all right, the introduction, as you may know, begins with "we the peoples." Lovely, it sounds good, emotional, good. We must do this, we the peoples must do this, that, and the other. Gives you a nice, comfortable feeling, doesn't it? But how do you express it? We the peoples. The inevitable question is, given the world population, how do you give we the peoples a voice? After all, this is where it happens. And how, given the proliferation of associations and non-governmental organizations, would the voice of the people ever be heard? Most fortunately, we had FDR's wife to hand. We had Eleanor Roosevelt. Splendid lady. She was extremely good on inviting people to tea in the afternoon when they became aggrieved and disagreeable. And she calmed them down. And, for example, we do know one ambassador who was all set to deny the charter and to go ahead. In fact, Eleanor's public skills caused him to change his mind. And so the charter and the United Nations system went forward. Now, why is Eleanor so important? She's so important because sitting around with all these government officials, she said, how are you going to express we the people? So she said, okay, you've got to put in, right at the very beginning, an article which determines and sets the story, sets the tale for the system we're about to put up. And this is Article 71. This is where our legitimacy comes from. And what does it say? The Economic and Social Council, which, as you all know, is equivalent to the Security Council in value, in relationship to all the world governments of the General Assembly. Article 71 states that the Economic and Social Council may make suitable arrangements for consultation with non-governmental organizations. That's us. Which, and this is it, which are concerned with its competence. We're not here for the prestige of wandering around the UN buildings, either here in New York, Bangkok, or wherever it happens it is. We are fundamentally here to be concerned with international events for which we have competence. And there's a tremendous amount of competence in civil society, without question. Then, in fact, Article 71 says, such arrangements may be made with international organizations. So that takes consultative status on to places like the WHO, the ILO, specialized agencies that were in being before the United Nations system started. And also, where appropriate, with national organizations, after consultation with a member of the United Nations concerned. And this is, for example, why some of us will be attending the UNECE meeting along to hear what Nayanda puts forward. Now, if you are looking at it, finding the best route forward for how we express ourselves is never easy. Advocacy is not an open and shut procedure. Stimulating the change that we want is a matter of using influence and developing effective strategy. It takes time, and it's this tool of consultative status which, if we use, and we use correctly, and possibly will bring about change. Then the question is, how has it been actualized? Well, it was actualized by the General Assembly. It wasn't only that it was in here. The fourth resolution in 1947 of the General Assembly pointed out that you had to actualize these words. You had to bring pragmatic direction and follow up. And this is where resolutions come in, and everybody should read them. For example, the latest resolution on the consultative relationship is in 1996/31. There are 10 pages here. There are 10 pages of information that you should read. Because of the timing, I put the major ones up on the side, and I won't go into them, but Well, okay, okay. Here they are. I don't want to, but if you look, these are the key principles. The organization should be concerned with the matters, that's international government business. The aims and purposes of the organization shall be in conformity with the charter. If we don't know the charter in the back of completely, how can we make sure that what we're doing is in conformity to it, which is the justification for us being here? The aims and purposes of the organization shall be in conformity. The organization shall undertake to support and promote. What are we doing to promote the work of the United Nations? In accordance with the organization's own aims and purposes and activities. I can very well remember Save the Children Fund getting up and criticizing their own government very strongly during a universal periodic review of, in fact, what the Swedish government had been doing with regard to human rights. Save the Children were working very clearly on their duty and their job. Then you also have to realize that an organization isn't just a wishy-washy term. It refers to non-governmental organizations. And that means across the board. It also should be of recognized standing, i.e., does the public look at the worldwide WCA and the general public say, well, this is a good organization, we're not surprised they have 25 million members. So this again is because the worldwide WC conforms to the role it should take up in consultative status. And but this doesn't mean that the small group with a small idea is lost. It also says where there exist a number of organizations with similar objectives and interests, they can join together. They can make an alliance. They can join together in order that they come into the discussion, into the use of consultative status together. Now, it also points out something many of us who've acted as representatives over the years. The organization shall have authority to speak for its members. But how do you get that authority? My authority comes from my CEO. It comes from the board of my organization. So consequently, even if I have strong personal views about something, what I'm producing at the United discussions here is what my board and what the president of my organization says. Have to think that one's personal, emotional commitment is one element, one's professional work, and even if you're in the voluntary, not-for-profit sector, you have to be professional. And all of us, I believe, very much are. So consequently, this is extremely important. Now, you have to remember at the moment in consultative status, how many NGOs have we got? It is 4,165. Huh? You also have to remember that because they have a job to do, they are categorized according to their competence and what it is they contribute. So you will find that of the 4,165, special status is given to 3,034, and 146 is given to general status, and then there is an element of the roster. You happen to have a particular group with a particular facility who's probably getting into some technological activity. I just met an old student of mine in here who's doing who's an intern and who is busy writing a report on the whole question of results in management, results assessment in management. So he's an intern and he's doing that, and he is dealing with an organization on the roster. Now, you also have to remember that the suitable arrangements for consultative status led to two groups in the Secretariat. On the one hand, you have the Department of Education, of Economic and Social Affairs in New York. And they are responsible for the non-governmental organization committee of ECOSOC. On the other hand, you have the Department of Public Information. And that is what all of us as NGOs and representatives do. It's a publicity arm, it's a marketing arm of everything we do. And one needs very much to keep those two very much separate. So far as consultative status is concerned, it's hard work. And here I do speak from the heart. As a newly appointed international representative, I hadn't a clue what was really going on. I did have the chance, though, to get to the United Nations NGO Liaison Office. And the NGO Liaison Office had Raymond Martineau, who's now a president. Exactly. So there I was, and she sat me down, and she was so charming, and she, like Eleanor, said, "Would you like a cup of tea?" And I said, "Yes, I would." And so far as this, her information and advice was invaluable. She said, "Go ahead, for goodness sake, and check the origin of the United Nations and its system and how it came about. Think to yourself, what is the structure that you are trying to influence? What is the work of the Economic and Social Council and its regional commissions? Take to heart the General Assembly resolutions that condition and make legitimate your action by civil society. And for goodness sake, make sure that you are promoting the views of your association through a close relationship with your headquarters and board." In conclusion, there are just a few things that I'd like to express my personal appreciation. At the opening plenary, several speakers spoke of the lifetime impact made by international work in the not-for-profit sector. For me, this has also been true. It has meant many years of activity and led to friendship and led to getting to know great individuals, many of whom are here today. I know from experience, whatever your project or campaign, there are no miracles or immediate results. Here, I will share with you the experience of cooperating with other representatives in the NGO Working Group on Traditional Practices, with the leadership of Mahana Raz's work. Following a 1979 WHO report, the issue of FGM was pinpointed by Swedish members in Stockholm. The work was further developed at an international conference in Turkey. At that conference, a Nigerian member of the same association, a gynecologist and obstetrician, came up and committed her knowledge and skills to add to a surgeon from Europe and other people along in Europe. Immense progress has been made over more than 20 years of civil society at the legal level, but still a tremendous amount needs to be done. Now I want to follow Nyan Zai, who started us off at the opening plenary. She pointed out that we should remember all those people who made so many contributions, but they've now left us. And in this regard, I would like to recall Dunja Pastici Ferencik, who's a Croat who stood up in 1985 pursuing the whole issue of unpaid work. So in fact, it came out in the plan of action, although, of course, as we all know, we're still having to work on it. She was one-time head of INSTOR, head of the Science and Technology at the UN New York, and finally, she was deputy director of the UNECE. She was a gifted economist and a delightful friend. She raised the feminization of poverty and asked me, one of the first times she met me, "What are you doing about it?" And especially, as I said, the cause and the problem of unpaid work. Now, I have to remember this. I will recall her support for what, in fact, we have, and we're going to hear from the NGO Liaison Office, the excellent link between civil society and the administration in the United Nations. At one point, I remember Dunja invited me to a UNECE government delegate meeting. Questions were raised. What's that woman doing there? She's an NGO, I believe. I had to withdraw. Of course I had to withdraw. I mean, that's protocol, and, off I went. Coming down the corridor was Dunja. Sonia, come back, come up. Got there. I said, why? Oh, she said. Oh, she said, you know, many of these government representatives, they've never read the Charter. They've never read the Charter. They don't know Article 71. They don't know that you should be here and that we should all be relating and connecting with you. Do you wonder why I remember her? And also say that she has something to carry in all our minds forward. And we do go forward because we've now got mandates and the resolutions, and there's masses to do in the future. I thank you.